So hello, this is the first video after my summer break, and this is about relational databases, and I'm just gonna cover the three different types of relations between in a relational database. Okay, so first of all we have a table called class, and it just stores information about a module, let's say in college. So we're basically saving, we're just having here something called maths, and we know it's taught by David, and we also have his email. We have another class called English, which is taught by Junior, and we have his email as well. We have art taught by David and music taught by David. So as you can see, it's not a really efficient way to save information because we've saved David's information 3 times when we don't really have to. So what I mean by that is, imagine we could just get rid of this cell here, and we just knew by heart that David's email was david@email.com and Junior's email was junior@email.com. Then we wouldn't need to repeat their email over and over again. And this is when relational databases come handy. So what we can do is we can split, instead of having one table, we can split it in 2 different ones, and we can keep reference of each table depending on what we need. So before we go into that, we know that, well, you're gonna know now that there is three types of relations. There is one that is called one-to-one. There is one-to-many, and many-to-many. So one easy example of one-to-one would be a student and address. Each student have only one address, and one address would have only one student, unless they're like a brother and a sister, but we're not counting on that. Then one-to-many would be really handy. Well, an example would be, for example, a class and a teacher. Only a class has one teacher, but each teacher can teach different classes, like we're seeing in this example. And also, well, the other one, there is many-to-many, which is a bit more difficult, and we're going to see at the very end, okay? So if we go to the very bottom here, where I'm actually going to split them in 2 different tables, okay? So now we have a class, and remember that each table has to have an identifier that has to be unique. So what I mean, we normally use numbers, and what I mean by that is that you can be looking for a module or a class by its name, because there might be a class that is the exact same name. For example, there might be 2 maths classes, one for DT228 and one for DT282. So we have to have an identifier, which is we're going to call normally an ID, that is unique to each different row. So we have 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it just goes on and on and on, and it cannot be repeated. So now we have the example we had before, but now we have a class and a teacher. We divided them, and instead of storing the teacher's name and the teacher's email, what we're going to do is we're going to keep the reference from another table. So instead of just saying teacher's name, we're just going to say teacher ID. So what we can do is that if we get, let me just get this arrow here. So we can say is that we want to see who is teaching maths. Well, that's very easy. We have to go and see, okay, who's the teacher ID? The teacher ID is number 1. So now we can go to the teacher table, find its ID, and we say 1. And we know that's David, and we know he lives in Dublin, and his email is david@email.com. So this way, we won't have to be repeating the teacher's email on City over and over again in the same class, when we can just keep a number, and then we can reference it out. We can make a reference out of it. So that way we won't have to be repeating the teacher over and over and over. So we can do the same when it comes to like looking for example, who's the English teacher. Well, that's very easy. We go to the teacher ID, and we say that is number 2. So all we have to go is just go to the table and find the row whose identifier is number 2. And then we know that the teacher is Junior, that he lives in Wicklow, and his email is junior@email.com. So it's as easy as that. So that's why they're called relational databases, because again, we're relating one to another. And this type of relation is called, as I said before, one-to-many. That is because one class can only have a teacher, but each teacher can teach different classes, more than one. That's why it's called many. And then if we go to the very end, we'll see that we have a class and a student instead. And this is different because each student can have more than one class, and each class can have more than one student. So how can you do this? Well, you can't really keep a reference for the class ID and the student ID in each, because the relation wouldn't be a many-to-many, as it is in this case. So what we can do is we can create a third table that is going to keep the relation between one and the other. Okay, so normally these kind of tables have like meaningful names, and I just call my one student classes. So student classes has three different columns, has an ID like always, has a student ID and a class ID. So if we use this type of layout, we know that the student ID number with, okay, so let me get this color. The student ID, the student with the ID number 1 has a class, goes to a class with an ID of 1. So we go here, we know that Bart is taking a class, is taking maths. If we go again, we know that Bart again, because this is number 1, is taking a class with an ID of 2. So we know that Bart, because has an ID of 1, is taking a class with an ID of 2. So he's taking English again as well. And then we also know that, again, student ID 1, so Bart is taking a class with an ID of 3, which means that Bart, with the student ID of 1, is taking a class with a class ID of 3, which is art. So basically we know that David is taking maths, English and art. Then we keep going on and we see that there's a different student here. And we know this is 2. So who's 2? Lisa. So we know that Lisa is taking a class with an ID of 1. So we go up again, we know that the class ID with number 1 is maths. So we know that Lisa is taking maths, and we also know that Lisa, again, is taking a class with an ID of 4, so she's taking music. Okay, so this would be the way to store information when it comes to a many-to-many relation. We just have to create a table in between both classes or between both tables that can relate one to another. So yeah, that's the end of the video. The last thing we should cover is data types, but that's something I'm just gonna put it in the description of the video, so it'll be alright. Okay, thank you.